Mike Brown, the former FEMA director.
Joining us here is the former FEMA director.
History, I think, was very unkind to you, my friend. Very unkind.
Mr. Brown, thanks for being with us.
This is Michael Brown Unplugged.
Hey, good morning, everybody. We'll call this the Civil War edition of the Michael Brown Unplugged podcast. I've told you before that on Sunday mornings I tend to watch CBS Sunday Morning, and I know it tends to be a little bit lefty, but it's more about culture, and I just find it kind of a good break away from politics. For example, last Sunday, Jim Gaffigan did a whole bit on cheeseburgers, and it was mildly entertaining. It wasn't laugh out loud funny, but it was mildly entertaining. It was certainly more entertaining than Face the Nation that followed on afterwards, or Meet the Press, or CNN's Reliable Sources, or any of the other Sunday news shows. I don't watch them because by the time I've finished, CBS Sunday Morning runs from 8 to 9:30. And by the time 9:30 rolls around, well, it's time to take Greta the Leonberger on a walk or to go play with the grandkids, or, we're headed off to somewhere. So I tend not to watch them and instead rely upon the clipping services to see what was said on the Sunday news shows. And because of the times that I do the recording for the podcast, I don't always catch all of those until maybe 24 hours later, which is the case of CNN's Reliable Sources. So welcome to this edition of Michael Brown Unplugged, which we will call the Civil War edition of the podcast. The founders, when they set up our system of government, expected us to reach an impasse. It's why we have 3 separate but equal branches of government. It's why the legislative branch is a bicameral legislature. It's broken up into 2 houses, an upper house and a lower house. You have an executive to administer the laws that the legislative branch passes, and then you have the judicial branch. I mean, I can't believe I have to explain this, but I think sometimes we forget that the system is designed so that we just don't have these wild swings from one extreme to another extreme. It's why I have such a bugaboo about the use of the term democracy. We are not a democracy. Democracy is in essence mob rule. So the founders have set up this system where when we have these impasses, and we have many impasses in America today, healthcare, racism, transgenderism, free speech, hate speech, all the speech codes. We have all of these different impasses. And the founders set the system up. So once an impasse was reached, somebody, one side or the other, or both sides, have to either be willing to live with the impasse. And when you live with the impasse, that means that you're going to just use that impasse to your political advantage. So let's take healthcare, for example, because I think healthcare, or immigration, you could take either one of those. Either one of those issues are going to be pivotal issues for the 2020 presidential election. Nobody's going to budge. Nobody's going to give an inch. And here's why. As long as that impasse exists, then both sides can play to their base, they can fundraise, they can motivate, they can get out the vote, they can do everything using the impasse as the basis for their political activities. So whether it's immigration or healthcare, we're at an impasse. Let's use healthcare for an example. One side, our side, says we should have more of a market-based approach to healthcare. We should have more transparency in the prices that we pay. We think that people ought to be able to buy whatever kind of private insurance that they want to buy, that they can afford to buy. Doctors ought to be able to charge what they want to charge. We should have choice of doctors, just as we have choices of gas stations to go to or convenience stores or grocery stores. We ought to have the choice of which doctors we go to. And then on the other side of the impasse, those people, they want, in the vernacular of today's campaign, Medicare for all. Medicare for all is just a nice way of saying a single-payer system. And it's a way of saying single payer without admitting that Obamacare has been an abysmal failure. So you have these two extremes. On the one side, let's just have the government take over health care. And over here on the other extreme is let's have the marketplace take over healthcare. Now, obviously, I lean on the side of the marketplace because the marketplace is going to bring down costs. It's going to give us more choices and more innovation. And if you don't think that's true, look at the modern Veterans Administration. Look at VA hospitals. Not exactly a paragon of innovation. Not exactly a paragon of the world's best health care. So we're at an impasse. What we do with that impasse could lead to civil war, or it could eventually lead to some sort of compromise that might resolve the issue. Now, the problem that we have with this current impasse are guys like me, maybe people like you, who say, no. Medicare for all, government-run health care, socialized medicine is a non-starter. That is a non-negotiable item. Now, think about that position, because that really is my position, although we already have that. We have that in terms of the VA system, and we have it in terms of Medicare and Medicaid. And to a certain extent, we have it because nobody's denied health care in this country. You may not get, Mayo Clinic style health care. You might get, the local corner urgent care because that's all you can afford. But anybody walks into an emergency room, you're going to get treated. But the problem is, over time, progressives have allowed health care to encroach further and further into our lives so that now the mantra of Medicare for all to ill-informed or uninformed people sounds pretty good. Why, my grandma's on Medicare and she loves it, and so why don't we just give it to everybody? Nobody understands economies of scale. Nobody understands the bureaucracy that actually exists behind Medicare. I think most people who understand Medicare don't really understand all of the options that you have because, and look, I'm just now beginning to learn because I'm reaching that age at some point, about, you have Part A and Part B, and you got Part D, E, F, who knows, you got like every letter of the alphabet, some part. And so you buy supplemental policies if you want additional coverages for things like prescription drugs. But I think most people who just say Medicare for all don't think about that. Or those who are really disingenuous know exactly what they're doing, and they do just want single-payer health care. Then guys like me over here on the other side that want, a free market system still is willing to recognize that not everyone, there will be people, now listen carefully, there will be people who are incapable of providing for their own health care, either through private insurance or any other ways, because they are either mentally or physically incapacitated to the point that they can do nothing to care for themselves. I get that. So you see, I'm willing to budge a little bit. I'm willing to budge just enough, but I'm not willing to go over here to say we're going to just do Medicare for all. Now, what does that have to do with civil war? While I may agree with Carl Bernstein that we might be on the verge of a civil war, and any number of things, Antifa, a terrorist event, Democrats getting control of the legislative branch and the executive branch, and starting down the path of gun confiscation or repealing of the Second Amendment, things like that could be the flashpoint that sets the nation off on another civil war. I think the likelihood is much less than 50-50, but I do think that we're at that kind of stage where there's enough fuel that just the right kind of lightning strike might set off the Civil War. But I want you to listen not to the idea that we might be on the verge of a civil war, but why Carl Bernstein thinks we're on that verge.
This cold Civil War predates Donald Trump, and Donald Trump understood that we're in a cold civil war in this country, and he has exploited it and brought this cold civil war almost to the point of ignition through his actions and his words, which are unprecedented in terms of presidential conduct. No president in the history of the United States in 246 years has expressed the kinds of ideas and thoughts and undemocratic notions. And
Wait, let's just pause for one moment. Undemocratic notions. A lot of people are huge fans of Abraham Lincoln. But you know Abraham Lincoln suspended the writ of habeas corpus during the Civil War. You know that FDR, without, in my opinion, any constitutional authority whatsoever, interned Japanese Americans in internment camps. There is a long history of executives, of presidents, taking extraordinary measures that can only be described as dictatorial or authoritarian. Whereas when I look at anything that, well, look at Barack Obama and his pen in his phone. But when I look at Donald Trump, trying to be as objective as I can, I truly don't find anything. Now, some of his language, yeah. His language sometimes is like, seriously, but I get the hyperbole. But I don't see Donald Trump actually doing anything that's on the scale of interning American citizens or suspending the writ of habeas corpus.
Authoritarian notions that he has. We need to start connecting these dots. What do people in the country think of this, and why do they think and support him, no matter what he does, no matter how outrageous seemingly his conduct is? We've got some real reporting to do. That we need to make our table bigger in terms of our repertorial landscape and get out of the political weeds.
Yesterday I bemoaned that everything in our culture and our society is being politicized. But what better system is there for resolving these political differences than the system that we currently have? I think part of the problem, one thing the founders did not anticipate is the constant bombardment of news and information that is virtually nonstop. And if you don't proactively pull yourself away from that occasionally, you get sucked into this vortex. It's like Jussie Smollett and the polar vortex in Chicago. You just kind of get sucked into this vortex of every single thing that occurs has a political angle. And that political angle necessarily says there is no room for compromise, there is no room for debate, there is no room to try to resolve these things. Except at some point, those issues implode. At some point, the immigration system, I think it's broken as I speak. The immigration system in this country is broken now. Now, what's the tipping point that finally says to people on both sides of the immigration issue, fix it? Come together and figure out a way to fix it? I don't know. Maybe it's a spike in murders by illegal aliens. Maybe it's the cartels virtually taking over American cities. Or maybe it is such a huge humanitarian flood that the networks and the news stations cannot ignore, literally, and I'm not talking about just the videos we see of people crossing an asylum bridge. I'm talking about hordes of people in mass coming across the border and just fanning out uncontrollably into American society. I think those kinds of things is what is finally going to cause one side or the other to either cave or to make their move for victory. I don't think we're on the verge of a civil war, but here's what I do think. I think that we're at this stage where there are certain intractable issues, healthcare and immigration, open borders versus controlled immigration. I think that conservatives, people like you and me who believe that we We support immigration. We want immigrants. We want to attract the best and the brightest. We want to attract workers, particularly in this economy. We want people to come here and work. We just want them to assimilate. We want them to respect the rule of law. We want them to do it the right way. That's all we're asking. On the other side, it's just open borders. Just anybody from anywhere, if you can figure out a way to make it to a port of entry, whether that be an airport, a river crossing, an automobile port of entry, whatever it is, if you can just make it to that point and cross into the United States, Hell's Bells will give you whatever social safety net you want. We'll let you vote. We'll let you serve on a school board. We'll give you driver's licenses. We'll let you do everything. Those are two intractable views of one situation that at some point breaks down into a civil war. When? I don't know. But I think we ought to at least recognize that in a lot of these issues, we have reached the point where something's going to snap on one side or the other. And that's why I think this particular presidential election may be one of those points. And every time I see Antifa or anybody else that's out trying to shut down speech, that is committing violence, and the police are doing nothing to enforce the rule of law, that's when I think that if that gets much more out of control and spreads to places other than Los Angeles or Portland, and it spreads to, a place like Oklahoma City, or it spreads to Denver, or it spreads to Salt Lake City, when it starts spreading to flyover country, I think that's when most people on the right side of the political spectrum will stand up and say, enough is enough. I want to do one last example of what I mean about these intractable issues. On CBS's Face the Nation on Sunday, Acting U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, the acting director of that, Ken Cuccinelli, says that ICE agents are ready to just perform their mission, which is to go and find and detain and then deport the approximately 1 million people. Now, that's where everybody kind of cut off. And all they heard was, oh my God, Donald Trump's going to deport up to 1 million people.
Going to delay the roundup of migrants for 2 weeks until Congress overhauled asylum laws. Right. It's been 2 weeks. This has not happened. So what is the administration going to do?
Well, essentially at this point, it's been put in Matt Albans's hand, the acting director at ICE. He's a career ICE officer, came up through the ranks, and they're ready to just perform their mission, which is to go and find and detain and then deport the approximately 1 million people who have final removal orders. They've been all the way through the due process and have final removal orders. Who among those will be targeted for this particular effort or not is really just information kept within ICE at this point.
So
I want you to think about that. 1 million people who have final removal orders. That means that they have gone through all of the due process that they're entitled to. It doesn't mean they showed up. It just means that they were given a court date. Their case was heard. If they chose not to show up, then the federal government, the immigration lawyers, presented the government's case. No one was there to argue on behalf of those particular illegal aliens. And they were issued final removal orders. That means an immigration judge signed an order that said, either based on the merits or based on default because they didn't show up for court, you are hereby ordered to remove this individual from the United States forthwith. What's wrong with that? If you get into a dispute with a contractor. You pay the contractor a certain amount of money. He doesn't perform the job. So you take the contractor to small claims court. The contractor doesn't show up at small claims court. So you get your judgment. Let's just say it's $1,000. So you get a $1,000 judgment against that contractor who failed to perform the work then failed to perform or failed to show up in small claims court, and an order of default judgment was entered against that contractor, that defendant. That now gives you the right to go collect that judgment. You can go put a lien on his property. You can go garnish wages. Any number of things that you can do to now collect the $1,000 judgment that you have because the contractor was afforded all of these rights of due process but didn't show up. There are speeding tickets. Don't ask me why I just thought about a speeding ticket. You don't pay a speeding ticket. You don't show up. You don't show up for court. You don't pay the speeding ticket. You just ignore it. That court date is going to come and go. The district attorney, a prosecutor, is going to say, well, Michael Brown didn't show up in, such and such a county, so we're going to enter a default judgment against him. And under our rules, that notice will certainly earn points against my driver's license, and then at some point may actually earn a suspension of my license. So if I were to be stopped again, now I have the additional charge of driving with a suspended license. Everything has consequences. Why do we have such a difficult time wrapping our head around the fact that people who showed up illegally, came to this country, crossed the border illegally, was given every opportunity? Look, here's what you need to do. Here's how you do it. Here's the court date. Here's where the courthouse is located. All of that information, and you don't show up. And now Trump says these people have final deportation orders, final removal orders. Let's get them out of here. What's wrong with that? I don't get it. Well, actually, I do get it. And you know what I get? What I get is that those on the other side are strictly looking at this from I don't even want to call it a humanitarian point of view, because it has nothing to do with humanitarianism. It has more importantly, it has to do with politics. We don't want to do anything because, well, those people may have gotten a job. Those people may have brought family here. Those people may have done all sorts of things. And so it's tugging at the heartstrings while ignoring the rule of law. And the more you tug at the heartstrings and the more you ignore the rule of law, the more the country descends into anarchy and the more or the closer it gets to civil war. Okay, enough about civil war. Let's get on to some really important stuff. I honest to God, don't know where to start with this true insanity. There's a writer at the New York Times by the name of Penelope Green. I wonder if that's a real name or a pseudonym. Anyway, in this New York Times article, she asked if Americans really need air conditioners. The Atlantic staff writer Taylor Lorenz jumped onto this notion by declaring that air conditioning is sexist because, well, air conditioning is sexist. Air conditioning. You see, we think that politics invades everything. Well, dumbassery invades everything else. So in this article, this woman, Penelope Green, she noted in her article a study performed by Nature.com said how building temperatures, once set to the comfort preferences of 1960s era men in suits, disregard the thermal comfort of female staffers. I guess we have sexist air conditioning at our house because Tamara keeps it on meat locker, and I try to keep it on, can we afford the electric bill this month? But Green did note that building managers control the temperature, and that building managers often rely on industry standards that are set by the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers. Those standards suggest anywhere between, I thought this was nuts, anywhere between 67 to 82 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a 15-degree range. Now, I give this woman credit because she does show both sides of the story, including one business in Philadelphia that tried to go a summer without using air conditioning. Can you imagine Philadelphia? Oh, like D.C. Now, it failed because the employees complained about the sweltering summer heat. But here is a significant portion of Green's article, and the emphasis is going to be mine. A byproduct of the experiment in Philadelphia was the evolution of the survey process, now a cloud-based app called Roast that revealed something rather illuminating. Here's my emphasis. While there were slightly more survey responses from female staff, the differences in thermal comfort between sexes was insignificant. So, of course, the first question that pops into my mind, does that mean that women are just more inclined to participate in surveys, particularly surveys that talks about the temperature in an office? Now, the next, she also writes, and this emphasis is mine too. It turns out, she writes, gender is less a predictor of thermal comfort than other factors, like age, activity level, or, tellingly, the relative wealth of the society being surveyed. I wonder what that means. People in countries with lower GDPs, according to David Lair, the communications director and a researcher there, people in countries with lower gross domestic products are more comfortable with a wider range of temperatures. It appears that first world discomfort is a learned behavior. Of course it is. How many times do you go somewhere and you can't, the humidity is awful, but then you live there for, 10, 15, 20 years, you become accustomed, you may not like it, but you become accustomed to the humidity. It is a learned behavior. How long did we go without air conditioning? And we just suffered through it. Now, Penelope wrote that at the New York Times, management keeps the temperature at the newspaper between 72 and 74 degrees, which they say is based off suggestions from employees, and that the men preferred 70 degrees while women wanted it 2 degrees higher. Now, see, to me, that's counterintuitive because Tamara would want it like at 65 degrees, and I would want it at 72. So is that sexist? Well, a person by the name of Taylor Lorenz, another writer at the New York Times, air conditioning is unhealthy, bad, miserable, and sexist. I can't explain how many times I've gotten sick over the summer because of overzealous AC in offices. #ban AC. What a bunch of wusses we are. Now, I freely admit I want my air conditioning, but I want to provide some reality for Ms. Lorenz. Most buildings do have temperatures too low. And there are times, particularly I think as I get older, that I always keep just a really light jacket somewhere, just in case. But I also believe that too cold is better than too hot, because let's face it, you can always warm up because you can put a jacket on, a sweater on, you could, put thicker socks on, you could do any number of things. But if the temperature is too hot, well, you can strip naked and still not cool off enough, and then we'd have an entirely different story about whether air conditioning is sexist or not. But it just seems to be getting kind of old and frustrating seeing women scream sexism whenever they encounter criticism or something that makes them uncomfortable. It must be the patriarchy. The patriarchy must be trying to oppress women and force them to stay at home and stay barefoot and in the kitchen and just have babies and I can't think of any more cliches, but you get the drift. Speaking of sexism, although this isn't sexism, I guess this is, this is just pure dumbassery. There's a Southern rock band, the Confederate Railroad. It's been around, I'm guessing, 25, 35 years, maybe longer. I know at least since the 1980s, because I kind of remember some of the Confederate Railroad songs. But those who conform to Newspeak will henceforth refuse to acknowledge its existence. Confederate Railroad must be banished from our lexicon. We can no longer listen to Confederate Railroad. TV station WSIL reports from rural southern Illinois on the first step in Southern Railroad's eradication. A band has been removed from the Daquan State Fair lineup. Confederate Railroad will no longer perform on August 27. I know that disappoints a lot of you because you were going up to the Daquan State Fair to watch Confederate Railroad. The Daquan Weekly reports the band was removed. I don't have to finish the sentence, do I? Seriously? The band was removed from the lineup because their name is Confederate Railroad. So a bunch of weenie-ass do-gooders at the Illinois Department of Agriculture made the decision. Now, everybody knew at the time that tearing down statues of Robert E. Lee was just the beginning. Anything explicitly referencing the South as a socio-historical entity must be erased. We must erase our history. You know why? Because the lefties are afraid that opposition will rally around the concept of the South. You see, I've never believed that redneck was a pejorative term. I always thought that redneck was like a term of endearment. But you got to you can't have people rallying around, dancing to, on a hot summer night at a county fair, listening to Confederate Railroad. Oh my! In the land of Lincoln? No. Regarding Confederate Railroad, the Conservative Tribune notes that, quote, there's no indication that their name has any political undertones besides as a tip of the hat to the Southern roots of their musical genre. Now, the Dukes of Hazzard did not have political undertones either, but that didn't stop them from going down the memory hole because liberals didn't approve of the flag atop that car. Now, Danny Shirley, who's a member of the Confederate Railroad, confirms that the point of the name is to indicate that they are proud to be from the South. Well, there's the problem right there. You can't be the South. If you're from the South, by the way, what is it still below the Mason-Dixon line? Because I'm not quite sure where the South is anymore. Because isn't South like a state of mind? But we've really reached the point where if you just want to, hey, I'm proud of my region. Texans are proud of Texas. Coloradans are, well, we're sort of proud of Colorado. We're kind of embarrassed too. We can't even be proud of the region that we're from without somehow impugning the character based on, well, you're from the South. The Confederate Railroad? Ooh. What? Here's the problem. What if you like Lynyrd Skynyrd? If you like Lynyrd Skynyrd, you better be advised that band is probably living on borrowed time too, and you better not stream it. What you better do, if you like any sort of Lynyrd Skynyrd songs, you better actually download them onto your hard drive, where it'll be at least a little more difficult for them to disappear. And actually, here's a little pro tip. Don't just buy it like from iTunes and then put it on your hard drive, because iTunes could actually take that away from you. No, you need to go buy the CD or the DVD, and then you need to rip that DVD onto your hard drive so that they can't take that off your iTunes account. A little pro tip. Michelle Obama and Gayle King, Oprah Winfrey's BFF, were at some Essence conference in New Orleans. And I'm sure everybody and their dog is going to be playing the soundbite where Michelle Obama talks about because Barack Obama was the first black American president, which I still don't understand that because I thought his mother was white. So if we're going to question the blackness of somebody, why are we not questioning the blackness of Barack Obama? But anyway, I digress. Everybody's going to be playing the soundbite where Michelle Obama tells Gayle King that because Barack Obama was the first black president and they were the first black family to, live as the president and first lady at the White House, that they had to be on their best behavior. And that's why they did everything so that there were no scandals during the Obama administration. Now, I know I've slept since Obama left office, so maybe I've forgotten a few things. But here's what I haven't forgotten. Benghazi, the Internal Revenue Service, Fast and Furious. And that's without even thinking. Those are just the top three that come to my mind. I'm sure there's dozens and dozens of others. But that's what everybody's going to be talking about. Instead, they miss what I think is the most cringe-worthy question and answer. Everybody talks about Donald Trump and some of the oddball things he says. Why is nobody paying attention to this? Listen closely.
Sex at every age. Care to share?
Yes. I support that principle. I mean, come on, Gail.
Okay.
I mean, yes.
It's one of the panels.
What are you supposed to say to that?
I agree.
No, I take issue with great sex at every age. No.
I didn't know if you had some personal stories you wanted to share. Okay.
Yes, Gail.
Okay.
The answer is yes.
Clap back. Your best clap back.
Whoa. Hang on a minute. Did Gayle King just ask Michelle Obama if great sex is good at every age? And they went straight from that to a question that started with the word clap? Listen, I don't make this stuff up. I just play it for you. Listen again.
Okay.
Yes, Gail.
Okay.
The answer is yes.
Clap back. Your best clap back.
Oh, man. I'm just having too much fun today. Remember yesterday I told you about the Afro Future Fest? I think it was in Detroit, where they were charging lower ticket prices for people of color, POCs, versus white people. White people, I think it was like advance tickets were $10 for people of preferred pigmentation, and it was $20 in advance for people of the patriarchy, white people. Well, now even Democrat presidential candidates explicitly discriminate based on race. Kamala Harris is now promising to hand privileged persons of politically preferred pigmentation $100 billion of other people's money to blow on housing that they can't afford. Didn't we go down this path one time already? Caused the housing crisis, the housing bubble? Fox News reports that Kamala Harris announced Saturday that she would invest, I hate that word. Let me rephrase that. Harris announced Saturday that she would spend $100 billion of federal money. All right, I'm sorry. Let me back up again. Kamala Harris announced Saturday that she would spend $100 billion of your money into housing assistance for black families as part of an effort to close the racial wealth gap in the United States if elected president. I guess that's because privileged persons of politically preferred pigmentation can be counted on as a group to attain lower levels of economic achievement than other groups. Have you ever thought about just how racist that whole concept is? So here's a presidential candidate who, by the way, don't be offended by this, but Kamala Harris is not black. I think she's East Indian and her father was Jamaican. They are not black. But think about how racist it is to say, I'm going to spend $100 billion of federal money for housing assistance because of a racial wealth gap, because apparently black people are not able to obtain or attain the level of economic achievement that other groups do. And I don't mean just white people. What about Asian people? What about any of the races? It is mind-boggling to me how stupid these people are. This also goes back to that same conference that Michelle Obama and Gayle King were at. While appearing at Essence's Global Black Economic Forum, Kamala Harris emphasized the role of home ownership in driving the growth of wealth in the United States. According to her campaign, she would help 4 million home buyers through down payment and closing cost assistance, granting up to $25,000 from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. I'm telling you, we don't have to go that far back in history to remember what caused the economic collapse of 2008. But according to the Democrats' ideology, only racism could explain favored racial groups having lower rates of home ownership. So back in the early 2000s, banks were strong-armed into giving them loans that the banks knew they could not pay back, and of course the rest is history. It's also the future, it seems. The story goes on to report that the program would target residents in red-lined communities, areas the Homeowners Loan Corporation has dissuaded lenders from investing in, which her campaign identified as a culprit behind wealth disparities. Stop and think about the bigger picture of this. It isn't that Democrats don't learn from history. Oh, they learn a lot. They learned that helping to crash the economy through the Community Reinvestment Act ushered Barack Obama into the White House. They've also learned that if you can just identify a group that is struggling for whatever reason, throw money at them. And even if other groups, mortgage lenders, banks, and others are looking at and saying, oh, wait a minute, we don't want to put mortgages into that area because, well, credit scores are all below 400. Credit scores are in the 300s. They don't even have credit scores in some of those areas. Why would we want to invest in that area? It is constant manipulation of the free market system and forcing otherwise smart business people to do things they would not otherwise do that ends up doing what? Costing us, the taxpayers. Well, we have finally found a solution to the scourge known as fatphobia. You didn't even know it was a thing, did you? What we're going to have to do is dismantle Western civilization, at least according to West Philadelphia therapist Sonali Washitwar. According to the Philadelphia Inquirer, her perspective, one of a fat South Asian non-binary person. You know, how about you're just a woman? You're a human being. No, I am a fat South Asian non-binary person. Anyway, she's gained notoriety through Instagram, where she posts Telegram-like advice at the account. And you might want to look it up. If you're on Instagram, follow me at Michael D. Brown or the Fat Sex Therapist. And I don't know, is it fat sex or she's fat, the Fat Sex Therapist? Now, I'm not sure where a fat South Asian non-binary person fits in on the cultural Marxist totem pole, but it must be higher than the core population, which carries on its conscience the guilt of spreading Western civilization through colonialism and thereby creating fatphobia. Now, she traces her contemporary fatphobia to colonial brutality and how enslaved people were treated. Citing researcher advocate Caleb Luna, Washitwar said curing anti-fatness would mean dismantling society's foundation. Quote, I love to talk about undoing Western civilization because it's just so romantic to me. Well, at least she's honest. She just wants to destroy Western civilization. Now, you think about it in the context of glorifying obesity, she righteously denounces white supremacist fatphobia. Now, I don't think there's nothing. There is nothing that white supremacists cannot be blamed for. In fact, just take out the word supremacist. There is nothing that whites can't be blamed for. But buying into the dumbassery is like installing a complete ideological software suite. Nobody should be surprised to learn that this woman describes herself as, are you ready? Get ready to keep the list. She describes herself as anti-cop, anti-U.S. government, and anti-military. Now, there's no doubt that law enforcement officers, the American Republic, and the U.S. Armed Forces are all guilty, not just guilty of fatphobia, but I think that the existence of fatphobia in and of itself is created by law enforcement, this republic, and the United States Armed Forces. So are fitness instructors. I was not surprised that the person who shot up the mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand, was also a fitness instructor. I was not surprised by that because people who are Nazis, I'm not making this up. This is exactly what the story says. I was not surprised that the person who shot up the mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand, was also a fitness instructor. I was not surprised by that because people who are Nazis, people who are white supremacists, people who are trying to think of the perfect race are also super fatphobic. Oftentimes, it's very eugenic. Now, I don't know, but sitting in front of the TV, eating a box of Little Debbie's, eating a box of donuts, instead of getting some exercise, might seem like you're wallowing in weakness, but actually, I think it's taking a heroic stand against Nazi fitness instructors and all those white supremacist fat phobias. Or at least you can see why a certain type would want a therapist to tell them soothing lies like that. She even wants to abolish the BMI, the body mass index. And she wants to do that because she says it's discriminatory to categorize and pathologize bodies based on fatness. You know, the more I get into this story, the more I'm thinking I kind of like this woman. Why should I care? I'm down to like 185. I'd like to get down to 180, but shoot, now I'm thinking just start going the other way. A box of donuts sounds kind of good right now. You know, if being fat were to become a protected identity, a protected class that confers privileges on those who claim it, think about the effect on public health. It would be almost as disastrous as anything else, any serious health risk that you can imagine. HIV, AIDS, human papillovirus, what's that word? The HPV virus, hepatitis, gonorrhea, syphilis, irritable bowel syndrome, psychiatric problems, tuberculosis, everything. Fat phobia. Talk about fat phobia.
One thing's for sure, I'm still the fluffy guy. And I say fluffy because that is the politically correct term. For those of you that don't remember, I used to say that there were 5 levels of fatness. Reason why I say used to say is because now there are 6. I met the new one in Las Cruces. The original 5 levels are big, healthy, husky, fluffy, and damn. People ask, what could be bigger than damn? The new level's called, oh, hell no. What's the difference? You're still willing to work with level 5. Example, if you're on an elevator and you're with your friend and this really big guy gets on and you and your friend look at each other and you're like, damn. But you still let the big guy ride your elevator. That's the difference. Level 6, you see walking towards your elevator. Oh, hell no. No! That's the difference. The guy that I met was 6'8", 614 pounds. Oh, hell no. And he was offended at my show. Not by anything that I said, but because of the fact that now at the shows, I started selling t-shirts. And apparently, I didn't have his size. Keep in mind, I go all the way up to 5X on the t-shirts. And he was like, you don't have my size. I was like, dude, I didn't know they made you.
Gabriel Iglesias. I love that guy. At some point, you reach the mindset that if everything is racism, then nothing is racism. If everything is white supremacy, then nothing is white supremacy. If everything is patriarchy, then nothing is patriarchy. Well, on Monday, Nancy Pelosi, in response to a question during a press conference, said that what you saw on the part of the administration with the citizenship question is, it's disgraceful. Do you know why she thought it was disgraceful?
But this is about keeping, Make America, this hat, make America white again. They want to make sure that certain people are counted. It's really disgraceful.
No, what's really disgraceful is you're claiming that we need to do the census as the founding fathers enumerated in the Constitution so that we can have a count of how many citizens are in the country, how many non-citizens are in the country, because you apportion congressional districts based upon population. And that population is of those who are here legally, not those who are here illegally. But then to take it to the next step that she takes it and says that it's because they only want to count white people. Nancy, shame on you. For all of you conspiracy theorists out there that don't think that we landed on the moon. This is the 50-year anniversary of the landing on the moon. July 19, 1969. So we're coming up on it pretty quickly. But we all know that it didn't happen. That it was all done in Burbank. It was all done in a Mel Brooks film lot somewhere. Well, now we've got the proof. We have found the lost moon landing film reels.
Welcome back. A former NASA intern could soon become a millionaire when he sells 3 lost reels of original videotape showing man's first steps on the moon. Imagine that. This is a photo of the reels that will go up for sale through Sotheby's. The auction site says the intern bought these and 1,100 other reels at a government surplus auction for about, get this, $200 in the 1970s. The man told Reuters, quote, "I had no idea there was anything of value on them. I was selling them to TV stations just to record over, to make some money." The man says his father spotted the tape on these 3 reels, which read Apollo 11, the name of the mission where Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin first walked on the moon. And back in 2006, NASA publicly admitted it lost the tapes ahead of the 40th anniversary of that moonwalk. Now they're set to be sold at auction at the end of the month on the 50th anniversary. They're expected to go up for about $2 million. All
right, so I've got all sorts of questions. If these were lost, do they still not belong to the government? Are they still, has somebody has Sotheby's or whoever the auction house is, have they just opened the reels and exposed it to the air so that they can, denigrate even quicker and faster? What about if these are magnetic tapes? If these are those old, 2-inch magnetic tapes, is the missing telemetry data? Remember, we discussed this maybe a month or so ago, that one of the reasons we can't go back to the moon is we've lost all the telemetry data. Now, I don't understand why the telemetry data can't be replicated, but maybe somebody out there can explain it to me. But, just think of all of the nuts. Oh, I shouldn't have said that because that might be one of you. But all those people out there that think that we never actually went to the moon, that it was all faked. It was, some Hollywood studio lot somewhere where the moon landing was faked. Now we've found the missing reels. But how can they sell them? If they were lost, at some point, does possession transfer to the finder? It doesn't make any sense to me. Now, before we get to any taxpayer relief shots, I think we ought to review the Chicago crime report for the 4th of July weekend just ended.
The holiday weekend is not over yet, and already 57 people have been shot in Chicago, with at least 5 of them killed. 57 people shot. Now, I know it was a long weekend, depending on whether you started counting on July 3rd or July 4th, and whether you counted all the way through Sunday or you counted through Monday morning. I don't know. But 57 people shot, 5 fatally. Maybe we need more gun control. Maybe Chicago just needs more gun control. First taxpayer relief shot comes to us from Baltimore County, Maryland, where the Popo shot and killed a man in Rosedale on Saturday in a shootout that began when officers tried to serve an arrest warrant. They had also tied him to a shooting earlier that day. According to Scott Wyckoff of WBAL.
Saturday, this all started in Windsor Mill early Saturday morning when a 37-year-old woman called police dialing 911 saying she'd been shot in the leg by her ex-boyfriend who forced his way into her home. Then after a day-long investigation, an officer from the White Marsh precinct identified the suspect's vehicle in a parking lot at Duke's Motel along Pulaski Highway. That's when they obtained a search warrant. When the SWAT team entered the room, gunfire exchanged with the suspect. The suspect was shot and killed. Right now, Baltimore County Police are trying to identify to see if that man in the room was in fact the same suspect that they believe to be involved in that shooting earlier in the day that they'd been looking for all day long here in Baltimore County.
The story goes on to say that our tactical officers became engaged in an exchange of gunfire at the room where we believe that suspect was located. During that exchange, the suspect inside was killed. No one else was injured or shot in the shooting. You know, you're serving a warrant. The popo comes knocking on your door. The odds are that if you shoot at the cops, you're going to end up dead right there. And finally, if you don't believe that illegal immigration has a deleterious effect on American society, consider this story out of Baton Rouge. WNCN. Louisiana Attorney General Jeff Landry has announced the arrest of an undocumented immigrant, or statutorily an illegal alien, accused of more than 100 counts of sex crimes. Miguel Martinez, age 44, was arrested on 100 counts of possession of pornography involving juveniles under the ages of 13 years old, 1 count of production under the age of 13, and 1 count of sexual battery of a juvenile under the age of 13. The Attorney General says Martinez was living in Harvey, Louisiana illegally. Landry, quote, tweeted CBS 17's tweet regarding the arrest and said, "Illegal immigration has real-life consequences. Countless numbers of needless crime victims, including too many Louisiana families and children. It's time to join at POTUS in demanding action on our southern border. #Build the Wall." Now, you want the really upsetting news? I mean, it's bad enough that this guy's 100 counts of sex crimes. He was previously deported in 2005. He's a registered sex offender in California. Don't try to convince me, because you will fail miserably. Because go back to the specific language the Attorney General uses. Illegal immigration has real-life consequences. Countless numbers of needless crime victims, including too many Louisiana families and children. It's time to join at POTUS in demanding action on the southern border. #Build the Wall. It's going to take more than just building the wall. It's going to actually take creating a system where we track people. I don't care if they come here on a tourist visa. I don't care how as long as they come here from a foreign country. You know, when I travel to Europe, when I travel almost anywhere in the world, even staying in a hotel, I have to produce my passport. Or if I'm traveling in a country that requires a visa, I have to produce my visa. If I overstay that visa, they come and look for me, and they haul my ass out of the country. They put me on a plane, and they deport me out. We don't do any of that. And until we realize that these are indeed needless crimes and needless victims, we're going to continue to suffer the consequences. So we need to change the system. We need to secure the border. And we need to recognize that, no, they're not all rapists. They're not all child molesters. They're not, some of them truly are here because they're just desperate individuals. I get that. But just because you're desperate doesn't mean that I'm going to lump everybody in together and just let anybody come in. I want a system that says we know who's here, when they came here, when they're supposed to leave, if they left. I want to know those things. And until we start tracking that, we're going to have more and more stories of people being arrested who have arrested and deported 14 years ago. A registered sex offender. Now, you tell me in this day and age, how is it that we don't have a database? Now, of course, the guy is deported once in 2005. He comes back in. But how is it that we don't have a database that at some point when this guy crosses law enforcement, that we don't know that he's a registered sex offender in California? How do we not know that he hasn't been previously
deported. It seems to me that we could take any computer programmer, anybody anywhere, could build a database to track these things, and we wouldn't have these needless crime victims. Think about it this way. All of these 100 counts of pornography involving juveniles were all under the ages of 13. We're talking about 10, 11, 12-year-old boys and girls. Children. And Democrats and those who want open borders think this is a nothing burger, that we shouldn't have to worry about this. We're losing our minds. And while we're losing our minds, we're committing national suicide. Thanks for listening to this episode of Michael Brown Unplugged. Be sure and subscribe to us on the iHeart app, on iTunes. Get to the website, michaelbrowntoday.com. Follow me on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all of the social media accounts. You'll find all of those at michaelbrowntoday.com. I'll talk to you again tomorrow.